not with us today.
I might be breathing heavily and just really gross looking, but I did just get back from a run. So in case anybody's wondering, I'm not naturally this sweaty.
Oh man, no, you look good. You look good, I promise.
I used to try and run like the morning of a wedding day, just like a light thing, just to get like, energized. And I stopped doing that because I started getting issues with my knees and my ankles. Once I crossed that 30-year mark, my body just started to break down, I guess.
I love that this is what we're starting with, because actually I've just started my exercise program as well, because I haven't done anything since January, like a cliche.
Yeah.
Like a cliche, January was awesome, and then nothing.
Did you also join a gym, like the true?
Yeah, I 100% did. The biggest thing for me is not even just energy or like replenishing energy, but focus. Being able to mentally focus on tasks, and when I feel healthy, I'm able to work better and have a clear head. So for me, that was like the big motivator, not just like how am I going to look in a swimsuit this summer.
No, I totally understand. I've always had like ADD and very poor focus, always, unless it was like something that I was obsessed with, like something photography related or maybe a video game or something nerdy. I was always, just all over the place. And I still am like that, as you'll soon learn throughout this discussion. But ever since I got the Apple Watch, I guess it was like a couple years ago, they have this app called Breathe. And it just kind of nudges you a couple times a day to take like just 1 minute or however many minutes you want, but at least 1 minute to try and focus. You just pay attention to your breathing, and it kind of pulses on your watch to synchronize and control and slow you down. And I found once I started doing that, like there was a clear benefit occurring. Just my mindset was nice. And then I also joined a gym in January of this year.
Oh, nice, nice.
And stretching before exercise and all that is something I never really took seriously, but started to do as just kind of I not only am I going to like breathe mindfully and kind of slow things down, I'm also going to stretch while I'm doing it because I have to stretch anyway. Why not kind of combine them? And I guess that's like one step shy of yoga, which I've never done and have no plans to ever do. But
you say that and just watch. Next year there'll be like Gear Guide yoga app.
Yeah, seriously. Anyway, yeah, that's been a pretty good habit I've gotten into this year. I travel a bunch, so that makes it a little difficult to stick to like commit to the gym every day or every few days. But whenever I'm back for any chunk of time, I'm there like every single day. Even if I just go and do nothing but stretch, I find that just forming the habit of going daily is super important.
Do you consider yourself like personally like a successful photographer? And when did you feel that you were successful, and that having routines and habits like now, like your exercise, do you think that also contributed to that for you?
Probably not so much the routine and exercise, because I've been at sort of the same place in my photography career for many years now. And I ate the worst food. I was the least, I always kind of jogged and ran for exercise, but very sporadically on and off. And no, I think the first time I felt successful, and that's always relative in a moving target.
Exactly. And it's different for everybody. Yes.
But I would say the first time I really felt some aspect of that was when I realized my home was my favorite place to be in the world. Of everywhere that I go, I love coming home and being at my house in this environment that, I just love. And so I feel like you can't really beat that. When your home is your favorite place on earth, that's sort of a good indicader of success.
I call that winning at life.
Yeah. And, we just live in right outside of Baltimore, Maryland. It's not like a destination that anybody would really consider, but I still love it. So, yeah. But, it's weird. I've had that question a bunch. The other answer I would maybe give is maybe you can define yourself as successful when you've got a horrible illness, but 3 weddings and 4 days to shoot, and you do it anyway because people expect you to be there.
Oh my God, dude. Actually, it drives me nuts when like success is like when you hit like the 6 figures. Is that right? 6 figures. Yeah, 6 figures.
Oh, okay.
Like you're now like a successful photographer, but you're fucking miserable. Like you're
Oh
tired,
yeah,
you're
that
exhausted.
can't be.
You got like no life. So we work with multiple different creatives. I've had more than one, as in like quite a few. I finally got a partner, and before I was just obsessed with photography, my business, and working. And I grew this big name, and I shoot all these weddings, and I'm feeling very successful. But my personal life was non-existent. So now I finally have a partner, and now they have to outsource and have to like find some work-life balance. But I think I do see it changing in our industry, but I think it still is like this expectation of like once you hit a dollar amount or so many weddings, or like you have like this many followers, and then you're a successful photographer.
Yeah, if that at all is even possibly true, which I agree with you. The dollar amount, you almost have to completely detach yourself from it in your way. I mean, obviously you need to like
make a
budget,
living, your business,
run a living. Yeah, be aware of your money. But like that for me, if I've ever done anything motivated by money, I've always regretted it. Full stop. It's got to be, that's got to be way down the list of priorities. And not that money isn't always on the list somewhere, but it can't be on the top. I know some photographers that, have thrown big, great, successful conferences, made like 300 grand or more, and virtually were able to retire because where they live and the lifestyle that they have and their obligations to pay a mortgage and all that were nothing like mine, for example. Like that would be an amazing success to have that much money for a little while, but it's still nowhere near for me to retire and like travel the world or anything like that. Like it's, I mean, six figures, I guess, is sort of an interesting baseline to draw, but I know a videographer who runs a company, shoots about 500 weddings a year all over the world. He has a full staff of like 25 employees. He alone makes, nearly $1 million in revenue, and he's one of the most unhappy people I've been around. So,
see, and how is that? This is your life. Like you're living your life right now. And what is your goal in your life? Don't you want to be like a happy, like fulfilled human being that wakes up every day and feels joy?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
But there is the trade-off, I guess, where if you are able to make just enough to be self-employed, which I guess normally the $100,000 mark satisfies that for most people, then it does come with an immediate gratification of waking up every day and being able to define your own schedule and what you're going to do. And again, for the first bit of success in your career, first few years, that is so satisfying and so encouraging and is enough to get you by. But even that starts to work against you. I found like the longer I'm able to be in control of my schedule, the more problems kind of pop up in terms of like, I don't know, feeling isolated as a self-employed person. Like, there are entire Monday through Friday where I don't leave the house. The only person I see is like the DoorDash delivery person bringing me sushi. Like that's not a great way to be for very long. Maybe a few days here and there, but a full week, it's like pushing it. And you have to come up with other things in your life to, keep you engaged and curious and exploring kind of new things.
I was just thinking also, like as a creative person, like what do we draw on? We draw on life mostly, and our emotions and feelings and our perceptions of that, but definitely life and the people in our life. Those experiences, I think it's critical as a creative.
And the other, I don't know if this sort of relates, but I seem to see that specifically for photography, a lot of people come from it as nobody starts off as a professional photographer. I'd say that's probably very rare. It all comes from it being a passionate thing, a hobby that you love, that you then do enough or are good enough at it that you start making money from it. And now it's your career, and nothing is left to fill that hobby void. And I find that it's super important. I've been very fortunate. I have a background in music, and that was really my passion growing up. I wanted to do music professionally, and I just never was able to make money from it. Photography, I kind of started taking seriously 10 years ago or 12 years ago, and started to actually make money from very, very quickly. And so music took a back seat professionally and on my list of priorities, but it's still always been there to kind of be that hobby.
That's amazing. Do you think that's why that photographers, you see kind of a cycle when around year 3, they're really hitting their stride and they're really feeling confident. And then year 5, you see such like a giant drop off in your peers. Do you think that's partly why? Is that they're obsessed with their hobby and they get really good at it and that's what they do, but then their personal life just fizzles out?
That's why the main thing. The other is being unwilling or maybe financially unable to go with the market cycle in terms of lowering your prices. Everybody's so fixated and sort of obsessed, it seems like, with like always shoot less, charge more, like raising your price. But you have to be sensitive and willing to adapt with when, 100 new semi-good photographers are suddenly in your market and are undercutting you in price. And people are happy enough with their rates. Like sometimes you just have to charge less. And I see absolutely nothing wrong with that as long as you're not charging yourself out of business. But, and the other aspect, like I said, financially, you can get in a little bit of a pickle when your lifestyle and your spending personally is maybe right at the edge of where your money making is. And if you're living, beyond your means or right at them, you're unable to go with those market cycles. And around year 5, most people have decided to like quit their main job and are really committed to it and have probably not enough savings practically. People are shocked when I generally recommend, like, before you go full time, have an entire year's worth of salary as a buffer, unless you have multiple revenue streams already. I was very lucky. Around year 3.5 or 4 for me, not only did I start shooting weddings, purely weddings full time, but also workshops, because I love teaching, and I started to sell out and do workshops regularly. So I had 2 revenue streams, always 2, and maybe a few more, not as significant, but still there, to diversify and help, kind of massage my way through the market cycle I've seen in the wedding industry.
I feel like there's a ton of opportunity as an entrepreneur, and I think that people now are obviously very aware of that. For me, when I was working my regular job, I made a certain amount, and it was okay. It was okay. But being a photographer, within my first year of going full time, I made double than what I made at my regular job.
Oh, that's awesome.
Right, because there's the opportunity there, and there is a level, of course, of like hustle, but also being smart. And I think what you said at the beginning too, I'm not sure if we hit record at that time, but I think we did. Not being focused on the money, and when you're focused more on your purpose and the why you're shooting, and you're making those real connections, and you really are finding your ideal clients, that's when the magic really does happen.
I've never been really aware or particular of exact like client personalities that I work really well with, because being in the DC market, it's a lot of lawyers and politicians, honestly, like people that work for government agencies and, all of the stuff that comes with that. And maybe they were clients that were creative in one way or another, but now most of my clients are just kind of normal people that work a 9 to 5 for the government. And what I found that worked so great for this market was to really lean into a commitment to only showing like my personal favorite photos. And it took me a while to really figure out, like I was blogging like everybody else just to be perceived as professional. Like, here they're getting ready, here's the reception, here's the ceremony, the first look, like all this stitched together story. And that is a great way to share your work. But once I started really leaning into just like, here's 4 photos, they're my absolute favorite photos from this wedding, I'm not going to show 40, here's 4, here's 12, here's 6, however many I end up with from the day. Over time, I found that did generate, act as kind of a magnet for clients that, come from all different personality types, from all different kinds of jobs. But because that part of my work really resonated with them, everything else fell into place. And additionally, because it's mostly the creative stuff that I show, they more often than not say, like, I can do whatever you want. Like, we don't even know what to tell you to do. Like, just do your thing.
Which is a dream. That's a dream. Yeah. And there's nothing worse than showing up at a wedding, especially on the day of, and the bride being like, can I have these Pinterest photos?
Your shot list. Oh my God. Yes. When you shoot more than 25 or 30 weddings, I think it's healthy to have the occasional humbling wedding where you're clearly there as a check mark for somebody, and it kind of puts you in your place. It grounds you, I think, a little bit in a healthy way. If every wedding was like that, if it was like even half my weddings, then I would readdress my approach to things. But having one or two weird clients a year where it's just like, okay, this is not a good fit, but I'm gonna try my best anyway. I think that's healthy. But I do tell clients that are sort of more of a Pinterest client, like, here's a list of photos I want. Can you do this? I tell them, like, well, can you also do this or only do this with my work? Like, can you go through my site and pin just photos that I've done? And that way I still get a sense of what you're looking for. And if they're not able to sit there and do that, then,
not the right fit.
Yeah, it's not like, why would you hire me? Like that.
Yeah.
And I don't say it quite as directly during client meetings, but that is something I loosely touch on. I literally had a client meeting a couple hours ago, and she asked me that. She said she has her planning a wedding book, and one of the questions it asks is, can I give you a full shot list of everything I want? And I told her, totally get where you're coming from. And I like clients that get a little obsessive, because it's a signal that they really care about their photos, but you just want to make sure the expectation is set that, like, you don't want me looking down and checking everything, because then I'm going to be missing what you didn't anticipate happening.
Yes. That's the real
your
good
grandma
stuff.
crying instead of your mother crying or whatever. Yeah. You want it to just unfold organically and trust that I'm going to capture it in a way that you want.
Our friends, like, when we talk about, like, if you're having a difficult day and you're shooting and you feel like you're just not on your A game for whatever reason, like, sometimes you have those. I think it's always good to remember,
all the time.
Like, yeah,
all the time.
Like all the time. Hopefully not all the time. But you should never feel like a rock star. Like, if you feel like a rock star at any time, like, you're doing something real wrong.
That's entirely true. 100%. Also, I am super flipping out because my new 85 1.2 just got delivered to my door.
Go get it.
Yeah.
Let's see it.
I switched from a decade of shooting Nikon it was October of last year to Canon, the Canon mirrorless system. This is the first day this lens is shipping. They're 85. So the cool thing Canon is doing is they're releasing, like, so many straight up L series Pro lenses right out of the gate. And the mirrorless body they released is sort of prosumer. It's not like, it's good enough that I was able to abandon Nikon and go full end, but it's still missing some features I'm looking forward to in a Pro body. But their lenses are, like, insanely nice and premium. Oh my God.
Hello, beautiful.
There's a lot of glass in there. That's intense.
That's amazing. Oh yeah.
Like the aperture.
Oh yeah. Did you just smell it?
I did. So every lens Canon has released that's like the Pro lens, I've been super impressed with. So I'm excited to try this out tomorrow. And the nice thing is all their mirrorless lenses have an extra digital control ring. Can you hear that? And you can customize that to adjust ISO or shutter or aperture or exposure compensation. And I use it for ISO, and it's really nice to have a dedicated finger, like a index finger for shutter, thumb for aperture, or other way around, and then this ring for ISO.
So I got a Fuji that's my baby mirrorless, just for, like,
oh, nice,
my personal use. Keep it in my bags. It's nice and small, just for fun. And I have a girlfriend that got the Nikon mirrorless, the latest one, and it's beautiful. But I have heard good things about the Canon, but I'm so used to, and this is such an excuse and I know it, but I'm so used to how my Nikon works. I don't have to think about it.
I literally would fall asleep with my Canon mirrorless in my hand and wake up and start configuring it again. Like, it took me a solid week and a half before it was like muscle memory and set up the way that I was used to my Nikon being, and was really, I'm super happy with it. But I can relate to that for sure. And and it's scary because there's a transition period where you don't want to let your wedding clients down with, like,
exactly technical, like, where is that button again?
You don't want to miss a moment.
Being right here. Yeah,
100%. But they did a good job. I tried to switch when Canon came out with the Mark IV. I tried to switch then because it was a really good sensor. and I couldn't, just because I couldn't get it configured the way that I wanted. And I got the Nikon D850, which was my all-time favorite DSLR camera, even up till now. But yeah, the EOS R has just been amazing. I really love it. But I actually did leverage my Patreon following to sell off at a really good deal, but very quickly, all my Nikon stuff when I was ready to. I just created a master list and gave everybody on my Patreon a really, really good deal. It sold within like a week. So that made it pretty easy.
I want to know more about Patreon. So I've heard of it and I see you talking about it, but like, just give me, like, just tell me, like, why should I be on Patreon? and why should I be on? But for like those of us who don't know as much about
No, actually, it has had a lot more success in sort of the YouTube and podcast world of creators. In a nutshell, just for anybody who has no clue what the heck we're talking about, Patreon is a company that was started by a musician, Jack Conte from Pamplemousse, a couple of years ago. They're just an indie band that he had some success with their music, and we're kind of known for sort of like OK Go, or is that the right band? The other band that like would do just these crazy music videos, just absolutely insanely smart, creative music videos. They were kind of known for that. And they sunk their life savings into this video and put it up on YouTube, trying to capitalize on ad revenue. And they just made like a pittance in comparison. They just didn't even come close to paying the cost of making the video, even though it got millions and millions of views. So he started Patreon like 6 years ago, not that long at all. It's crazy. As a place sort of, what's the best way to describe it? It's sort of just a support system for creatives. When you set up your creator page, you say my photographer, videographer, illustrator, whatever, writer, and then you can create tiers of support, whatever you want. It's completely up to you. I started off with a $10 a month. You get access to anything I post in that $10 feed. And think of it as a feed, a content stream of that you pay to have access to. So everything is hosted on Patreon's site. It's not like a plugin that you work into your WordPress site or anything like that. They host everything, and they also take care of the like technical support, the billing, all of that. So all you have to do is create your page, start posting, and then start promoting it to your social communities or your Facebook groups or whatever. And I just started taking little nuggets from my in-person workshops. I already had done maybe 50 or 60 of those over the last 5 years before that. So I had a pretty good foundation of students, if you want to call them that, just people that trusted me in my opinion and liked my way of explaining and teaching things. And I just started to make little videos, articles, or podcasts, like whatever I wanted to review a lens, like I'll certainly do with this guy, to talk about whatever I find interesting. And then it's as simple as being subscribed or not. What's really cool though is, say you subscribe, but then you want to leave because you don't want to pay or you can't afford it in your budget or whatever. As soon as you join for the very first time, or if you leave and come back, you get access to everything that's ever been posted in your tier right then and there. So if you are really frugal or whatever, like people leave for 6 months and come back, and there's 6 months of content there for the same amount of money. So it's a really interesting thing in that regard. But as a creator, I also have the ability to make like goals. So if I reach a certain number of patrons, I'll set a goal to do something like a really high value post. One of those was my in-person workshop. That's about 8 hours in a day. It's really intense, tons of content. And one of the goals I set for Patreon was, if I reach 1,000 patrons, I'll hire a videography team to come and record my entire full day workshop and then put it on Patreon in parts. And I met that goal middle of last year, something like that. So I did exactly that. And I've had other like smaller goals as stepping stones leading up to that. But it's nice because people can support you. And I've always been sort of weirded out by the other popular business model for photographers to create a preset pack or create a video and then just sell it. And then you make all your money. And then you have to create something else. It's like these these peaks and valleys of stuff.
Yeah.
And with Patreon, it's just sort of like this so far. It's just continuously, slowly growing. And I feel like that has more of a long-term potential benefit. It's truly something. And when I've talked with people that work with Patreon, they've reinforced this. It's truly a place that I see a long-term solution. You know, as I do actually get too old to physically be able to shoot a wedding or whatever, I see it as a possible way to ease out of that and maybe hire younger photographers that are up and coming to write and post on my Patreon, where they've got me as sort of an editor or a curator.
So for you, for a business model, like you're saying, like on your behalf, like for you, how it affects you in long term, and which is cool. What about for the people that, like your consumers or like your students, like why would they follow Patreon versus like Facebook? I know algorithms, I can already hear people saying that, or like Instagram, or finding you on other platforms, or is it now like you have to come on Patreon?
Whatever I post there, it's exclusive. And people are there because they want my specific opinion, or they want a deconstruction of my specific photos. And I have hired guest writers to come in and post things occasionally, people that I find that have something interesting to say, but 99% of the content is me and my voice. And yes, you certainly can find 20 other YouTube videos that will review this exact lens that's in my hand. But I just find that most of the people that do that, it's really shallow content. And when you really start to look at the work and portfolio of those reviewers, it's not great. I mean, sometimes it is, but I'm just a working professional. People understand that. The priority for me is wedding shoots, and maybe not in 10 or 15 years. And maybe the nature of the content and my use of Patreon will change when I shoot fewer weddings eventually. But right now, they just want to be there because it's the only place I'm posting a lot of this content, and they trust my opinion.
That's awesome. I think it's still important to stay relevant, even in probably the other platforms, to keep drawing people in. So even if, let's say, you were talking about, I'm not going to be maybe as popular after like my 7 years because there's new up and coming photographers that become popular. But how do you still stay relevant for people to still keep coming to you in Patreon? Like you have a great reputation, which is awesome, but 10 years from now, like how do you maintain that?
Well, that's the thing. Then the name of the game isn't necessarily growth or getting new people. It's retainment of the audience that you've built there, and kind of just fostering that community and making it a place that people are excited to be. It's not, I mean, yes, I'm the one like posting everything initially, but there are very long comment threads, and people have gotten to know each other, and other patrons on my Patreon platform value the opinion of other people there and see them over time. And it just kind of becomes its own safe place on the internet. And there's also some value, like I'm able to share things more depth and I don't want to say the word personal, I guess some personal aspects, but like really go into like revealing secrets and stuff, because it is behind this gardened wall of the payment, and it's not just out there. Previously, maybe I would come up with an interesting technique like prisming or using a special lens for Ring of Fire. And I would put that stuff out publicly on my blog because I do love just putting stuff out there and making it clear and interesting and easy for people to understand. But then what happens is these other sort of, flash in the pan now, more like news organizations related to basically just photography news blogs, would take that and say like, hey, can we share it? And I'd be like, sure. And what I noticed was instead of what they used to do, like a little snippet and then credit and link to my site to encourage traffic flowing to my website. Now what they do is generally steal the entire article. Well, I shouldn't say steal, but take the entire article. My permission, yes. But what they do is paste the entire thing and then make me an author of it on their site. Instead of encouraging, and then like give me a byline with like, here's where you can see more of his work. So it completely like pulls the rug out from like the Google SEO benefits, the traffic, and driving people to my space, my storefront, or whatever you want to call it. Patreon keeps all of that in my realm.
I think that kind of rolls into another question I had for you was, because you have invented these techniques to become like iconic in our industry, like the prisming and the ring of fire, all that. And I know there's so many more, but those are the ones that like mine personally, I'm like, oh, I gotta try this when it came out. But do you feel the pressure to continue to deliver these like innovative techniques? Like how, and I saw the one with the glasses and you're listening to music.
Yeah.
When you're playing. Yeah. And so like that's cool.
I guess that is technically a technique. It's sort of a method of shooting, I suppose. But yes, I do feel sort of like a yearly, what new thing can I come up with? But I don't know. I've always been like that. And sometimes it comes every year. Sometimes it's every 2 years or whatever. I don't put pressure on myself to like have a timeline of discovery for new stuff. But I come up from a computer science background and always sort of have a good pulse on newer technologies. And I feel like enough of that is coming out that I'm going to find ways to use it interestingly and creatively for photography.
So you're just like open to it. You're open to it, and then you like let it happen naturally, and you're curious about something versus like, I'm going to lock myself in the room for the next 24 hours.
I totally do that too. No, I love, that's one of my favorite things to talk about is like, just lock yourself in an empty room with like a couple of constraints, maybe I've literally done this with like a blow up office mannequin doll, like super weird. But like, that's my subject. And then I've got a lens and a camera, and what can I do with this? What, I don't know. You have to come up with little games to like constrain yourself. And then the creativity kind of punches through eventually. But that's, again, to bring it back to Patreon, one of the things I love about it, you can choose 2 different setups when you start. One is a per creation charge, where anybody that backs you pledges like whatever amount you said as the creator, say $5 every time you make something, your thing. If it's a YouTube video, then when you post that and you flag it as like, here's my creation, then they're charged. And or you can set up what I have, which is just a straight up monthly recurring subscription. So every month on the first of the month, everybody's charged again, unless they cancel their pledge. And that keeps a certain amount of pressure on me that I really like and fits well for my work ethic and personality. Every time the first of the month comes around and I start seeing 10, 20 people leave, I mean, I have no idea why they're leaving. Maybe it's financial. Maybe it's because I didn't deliver on the month before.
Maybe you went for a run and they did a video like super sweaty and they're like, who is this guy?
Yeah, this guy's gross. Where's his production value? Yeah, I don't even have like decent light right now.
No, you know, that's like totally my thing too. I'm like, why am I slightly pink in the back? I don't know. This white balance is no so good. Yeah,
my light's not turning on, but
you look. I like the side light.
At the end of the day, that really motivates me. I want to earn those people. I want to. Anybody that was there, I want them to see a few days later an Instagram story that's promoting a new post, and they're like, "Oh, why did I leave?" That really keeps me motivated. I don't think of it as like, "Oh, there's $10 I lost." It's more of like, yeah, I want that person to feel like they're getting such a good value that why would they ever leave? And I think it's easy and obvious for people to go at it as a photographer and the creative sort of subject matter, but I think there's space for any type of photographer, like particularly fine art and maybe portrait photographers that do create a really strong emotional connection in their work.
So, you know who would probably really benefit from this, like just hearing you talk more about it, are boudoir photographers, especially like the fine art boudoir photographers. There's not a lot of space out there to talk about that kind of work. And there's a few communities, but really only 2, especially one. But there's not a lot of places to even show your work or share your work because things can be so censored. But there's crazy talent out there, and they show it on their Instagram when they can, and they have their websites, of course. But Patreon would be
Patreon does support that kind of work. You do have to like flag your page as being gonna potentially have that kind of content, but they do allow it on the platform, I know. And yeah, so many of those photographers rely on print sales primarily, or maybe books or workshops and teaching to get by and make money. But I think so many of them would benefit from like a tip jar tier. Like you just post whatever you would normally post anyway. Maybe you lock down certain behind the scenes content or whatever, but just create like a $2 a month tip jar tier. And if you can have a couple thousand people paying you $2 a month, like that's meaningful income. That's something you can really, that can make a huge difference in your life and free you up to do even better work without having to worry about hiring clients or selling workshops or conferences or whatever.
I'd love to share that. And then like this, obviously, like with them and like our community, I know they would definitely something people should look into. I think probably I know you just had a workshop recently, and because Ryan Muirhead was there in it with you. Also Britta Bug, her work would die. I would die. So crazy talented. But I was going to meet Ryan at Camp Do More last week, and I totally missed out.
Oh,
That's
no.
it. That's the boudoir photographer. That's like Camp Do More. And like Do More Photographers is one of like the only really awesome boudoir communities out there.
It's funny because you mentioned right when we first started talking, I think it was before you started recording, but I can't remember. There's not always a lot of overlap between the wedding photographer world and like the editorial and boudoir, but Ryan is like the weird exception to that. I feel like he's been on every wedding photographer conference like that I've been at. It's so funny. He's sort of this weird bridge in those worlds, even though he's shot like one wedding in his life.
I think too, because when it comes to portraiture, that can you can relate that to wedding photography because you do portraits in that, or even like engagement sessions and things. But that's actually really freaking cool. I didn't know that. But I really want to know just a couple of things. As I'm like 1 hour later, you're like, oh, still. That's like the photographer thing, like just one more, right?
Yeah, I know. Classic.
Yeah.
Classic.
Yeah.
Let's just see what's around this corner.
Exactly. Ooh, this angle. I should have done 10 more like this.
Yeah. Oh, now you're in the perfect spot.
So no, the worst is for me when the first dance where the couple goes first. Like I feel like I have my angles and everything's good, and then it's like the father-daughter dance, and I try something completely different. I'm like, oh no, why didn't I do this for them?
I've been hitting a bad streak where I get set up and I'm really confident and love the angle, but they just like stay facing the same. They're not like rotating enough during their dance where I'm getting like the right expression. Like it's just their backs are too open. And then I'm like, okay, forget it. I have to give up this angle and like get their faces because they're just not like moving enough for the dance. That's happened like the last 3 weddings.
Oh, brutal.
Like, I need you guys to dance this way. This is such a great shot. And
twirl once.
Yeah.
Do it. In your career, so all the years you've been doing this, was there ever a time that you wanted to quit? It felt like really heavy burnout, because also all the things that you're doing, like how are you doing all these things? Like, do you outsource or do you have help with that? And then like, did you ever get to a stage like I have to outsource because I'm dying inside, even though I love what I do and I feel so much gratitude and I'm so freaking lucky to do what I do, but also I'm exhausted or I'm burnt out, or like maybe before I'm your partner or not, or it's kind of like what stage in your life?
Great questions. One, I don't outsource anything. I have tried to outsource everything at one time or another. But I've got a really efficient, super fast workflow. So I'm fine doing it all myself. The problem and the times where I've started to feel way too overwhelmed and like I need to stop doing something is with the in-person workshop things. There was a year where I did 25 in-person workshops all over the country, all over the world, along with a few conferences, along with 40 weddings, and it's way too much. And I can handle just weddings. I could handle just workshops, but that all kind of hinges on still having good wedding work. So like weddings always need the primary focus, and I've had to, and I'm glad that Patreon, again, bringing back to that a little bit, has enabled me to financially and logically and everything kind of take it back a little, where I don't feel like I need to, or if I want to take a break and not do workshops for a year in person, like it's totally fine. I'm able to do that and recoup a bit from all the travel, because that's the key thing. Traveling is so easy to say yes to, and these days I think it's easier than ever. I know it's a whole nother topic. It's not that easy to get destination weddings, but it's still easier than it used to be because the internet has kind of leveled the connection between everybody. it's so easy to say yes to that wedding, in Chicago, or that wedding in California. It's only a 2-hour flight. It's only a 5-hour flight, but it is, an extra few days of work that really starts to wear on you if you do that even more than a couple times a month. And there was a month last year where I was only home 2 days. And again, this is a problem for me. My favorite place to be in the world is at home. So I really started to feel the consequences of that, and decided to make an effort to travel less and stay grounded and take more weddings at home.
So you never, not once, did you feel like I got to change my life here? Like I got to get out
for weddings? No, I absolutely 100% am in love with wedding photography. It's my favorite thing in the world. I never, specifically shooting weddings, never have I felt that. I've certainly had weddings where maybe I didn't feel as excited or as strong or confident, or, it's my third day of shooting an Indian wedding and my feet are killing me. But mentally, I'm always smiling behind the camera when I'm shooting.
Where you're at now, do you feel like you are expected to reach like another level of success? Like, do you feel like pressure for that, either like from yourself or from the outside, or like what is your next thing? Like what's your bigger picture, or like your vision for your life, not even just as a photographer and educator, but for you, like this is my goal?
Yeah, that's super tough because that has changed. And it's such an exciting time with like so many new websites and technologies coming out. Literally, I found out about Patreon like a month before I started mine. And I was just listening to a podcast that mentioned, it's a fantastic podcast called Hello Internet. And they mentioned like, oh yeah, you should, check out our Patreon. We're doing some after show posts there for patrons only. And I was like, what is this thing they keep talking about? A month later, I had started mine and I just went for it all in by like 10 or 15 people my first month. And I grew from there. And I was just able to blink into existence this entire new stream of revenue, this entire new business. And I feel like that is going to occur again in the next 5, certainly in the next 10 years, as technology shifts and changes. Who knows what's going to be possible and what opportunities are going to create new small businesses for people. That being said, if I had to really hunker down and think like, okay, if I need to do a transitional life plan in the next year, I would probably start, a studio of other photographers that are maybe up and coming, but don't have the leads to sustain a full-time business. Maybe help those photographers that have 5-6 years in, really established a great professional business, good way of shooting, but realize they don't want to deal with 30-40 weddings a year to do it full time or whatever. And they just want a few, and just create a studio of 4 or 5 shooters in those 2 ranges and work with them and take on more of a manager mentoring role.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I see photographers even going out into like the public speaking realm, and they're like almost like life coaching, because which actually is, they're like the ones I'm thinking of are really bloody good at it. So I find that really interesting. I think, of course, this is my like one more shot.
Sure. Yeah.
If you were to tell our audience, like photographers, creative, like we work with not just photographers actually, but creative entrepreneurs. If you were to tell them one thing about work-life balance and one thing about success and one thing that they should, or like one thing for you that was a game changer when it comes to those things, what would you tell them? 1 or 2 things.
Have I tricked you successfully into thinking I have a good work-life balance? Because I don't.
The whole like being at home only 2 days does not sound.
I think I'm probably the worst person to really even pretend to answer about work-life balance. The biggest thing is just being super intimately aware of every layer of your process. So many photographers have poorly configured stuff as simple as Lightroom, where it is just not running fast. I hear that constantly. And Lightroom is absolutely capable of running insanely fast. I use a 12-inch super underpowered MacBook for 99% of my wedding edits, and it runs super fast. And to get it set up that way, there's like a couple of weird configurations and things you need to do. But like, yeah, any layer that is like causing stress, you need to identify and solve. And if you're just unable to figure out the technological side of like how to get Lightroom to run quickly all the time, then yeah, you need to be willing to outsource things to companies that do your editing for you or your album design and stuff like that. I think that's a key path to success. If you can't sit down and like solve the problem yourself, hire somebody that knows how to. And I did lie a little bit. I do outsource most of my branding. That's not to say my social media posts. I still do all that myself, but all my web design and my Instagram stories that are like really fancy and have my branding behind it. Like I did hire somebody to do that aspect of my work because I just tried myself and failed completely. To be able to like be willing to admit that and just chalk up the money to do it right by a professional.
Even we use the term work-life balance because it's kind of recognizable. But what I actually believe it's not work-life balance, it's life-life balance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
So if you're living your life and with fulfillment, then like I said to you, you're winning. That's winning at life.